So, welcome back to Map for a New Motherhood. I'm here today with Akilah Richards, who is a passionate woman about mindful partnerships and conscious parenting. She uses audio and written mediums to amplify the ways that unschooling, in particular, is serving as healing grounds and liberation work for Black, non-Black, Indigenous, and people of color communities all around the earth. Her celebrated Unschooling podcast, Fare of the Free Child, and the numerous workshops and gatherings that she has been a part of have garnered the attention of Forbes Magazine, the New York Times, Good Morning America, and most importantly, BIPOC families interested or living in more healthy, consent-based, intergenerational relationships. Her recent experiences with the intersection of privilege, parenting, and power are detailed in her latest book, Raising Free People, Unschooling as Liberation and Healing Work, which is available through the PM Press. Akilah, I'm so excited to have you with us today. It's truly an honor, and thank you for being here. Oh, you're muted.
You're so welcome. I appreciate the invitation. I'm close to a window too, so I'm going to mute when I'm not talking, just in
Okay.
case. But thank
Okay.
you. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So I'd love to begin to talk about how coming into motherhood and your experience with mothering has brought you to your work in the world.
Sure, sure. Um, so I wasn't a person who was like really excited about becoming a mother, or I know one of the questions like, when did you first know you were gonna? I have no idea. I didn't have any of those connections to motherhood or mothering. Um, but I had a lot of connection to nurturing and to sisterhood and womanhood, so a lot of the similar energies. And when I first became a mother in 2004, it was on the heels of medical situation after medical situation that said unequivocally that I would not be able to have children. I
Hmm.
have several issues that I'm actually doing surgery in about a week for one of those issues, and most of the medical experts were saying, yeah, that's not going to happen. I have two daughters. They're 16 and 14. And they really ushered in for me a sense of reconnecting and rehumanizing really my relationships with myself, with nature, with other people, because I realized so much over time what the opposite of that looked like and how much I embodied that as a parent. So for me, my motherhood really brought me into relationship with oppression and with the violation of human rights for whatever reasons, because it happened through me as a mother. There were things that I put on my children because it's the best thing for them. They might not know, or, all these things that seem perfectly fine. But as I really began to be in a different type of relationship with their questions and my own questions, and learning and how learning actually happens naturally, then it really just broke me open in ways that I continue to be grateful for. And my daughters really lead that for me. I call them my life guides because they've really guided me um, into the type of space and work that I do now as an unschooling organizer, for sure.
Hmm. Wow. So tell us a little bit more about what unschooling is, and yeah, how you bring that forth to the communities that you support with it.
Yeah. So and I do have an actual definition for unschooling. I'll send that to you too. It's also in my book. But I really look at unschooling as this child-centered thing that doesn't mean that other people aren't relevant and other things aren't relevant, but that the I guess the opportunity to be in relationship with a being at that stage in their journey is one to value and honor, not one to lord over and look at this blank slate idea. So unschooling is really to first notice and then question and then divest from schoolishness, which are all the ways that we think we need to show up and how other people then need to show up, and how we don't have the right to our boundaries and our say, so we push and we inch and we feel bad and we feel shame and we bully. All these things that happen as a result of schoolish environments, including classrooms, but beyond that, it happens in church, it happens at your job, it happens with your daddy, your mama, like right at home before you even get to school.
Right.
But it is very much perpetuated inside of schools. And so I call it schoolishness. And so began to really recognize what was happening in those spaces through my decision to with withdraw them from school. And we did that. And I talk about it in great detail in the book because the girls were pushing back against it. They were doing great academically because that mattered in freaking kindergarten. You
Right.
know, or just all of elementary school period. Like they, so they did academically, they did all the things and beyond, but then emotionally, it was the opposite. And Chris and I started to notice the way that their personalities were changing. And also, they outright asserted the ways that school and the structure of that and the culture of that was really violent for them. And,
Mm,
Chris and I spent a couple of years kind of doing the, okay, love, yes, it's gonna make you stronger. No
right.
one really loves it. Wait till, all the things. And then eventually over time, and really a lot with their pushback, we started to recognize that it didn't even matter if we agreed with their decision or that we understood it. What mattered is that we were trustworthy to them and that they could trust that they were telling us what wasn't okay for them and that we would at least consider that as much as what we just knew was right for them. So eventually that unraveling led to us withdrawing them from school. Then we began to do school at home, quite literally the same thing, just there. And then it
Right.
became a little nicer version of it. And then, until we got to witness all the many ways that it was Chris and me, and really so many of us as adults who did have a limited perspective on how learning happened. Because the more we backed away, the more they were learning, not reciting, not performing, but learning. And the more open they were being, the more space they seemed willing to take up. So that felt like, I don't know. There's a lot of scary stuff, but this also looks real good. It feels good. They talking to us with their whole self and not the, studenthood version. So
Right.
that's how we got into it. And really that's what it is for us to like allow people to be themselves in their journey at whatever stage they're in and to support learning and to support partnership, but not see ourselves as, the light in the way of our children.
Right. Yeah. So it's such a beautiful outlook and philosophy and embodiment practice. And the fact that your daughters felt safe enough to share with you, like, hey, this is not working, to me speaks to some level of deep trust that they had with you already. And then in trusting them, and I know it was a process, and maybe at first, they had to say it for a while. But what do you think it was in you that really allowed you to hear them and to follow their lead?
It's such an important question. Thank you for asking it because it gives me the opportunity to make clear that I don't think it's because I was trustworthy. I think
Mm,
it's because, like many of us, when you are in pain enough, you will say something oftentimes, right? You will do something. I think it's innate for us to want to be well and safe. And
yeah.
so they said it for 2.5 years before we actually withdrew them from school. So I think that it was just their knowledge, as newer people,
Uh-huh.
um, right? That it was a right that they had to be happy and to, as Marley, my oldest, would talk all the time about not having the time to think her thoughts. She
Uh-huh.
was very clear that that was something that she was entitled to. And I was the one, and Chris was the one, and all of the adults were the ones that were just not clear. So what happened is that we began to trust them, which in turn eventually made us trustworthy.
I
You get
see.
that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Yes, I've been listening to the course, I think from Schoolish.
Schoolish to self-directed.
Yeah, yeah. And one of the things that I really love is this idea of, each person in the family is the owner of their own time. And the part also there, I think that's like the last rule or belief about self-care. Everybody's entitled to that. And those, both of those things, I feel like are part of the motherfly archetype that I'm wanting to bring forth. I see actually a lot of parallels between the unschooling and motherfly, in the sense that my understanding of unschooling is a lot about the decolonizing of our parenting. And with motherfly, I feel like it's also a decolonization of motherhood and the patriarchal influence on mothering that really kind of puts us in this mode of, being the super mom or being the martyr. And so I would love to hear you speak a little bit about, that connection between unschooling and decolonizing parenthood.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, it's so, so powerful. And I'm really grateful to hear that synergy for you, that alignment with that, because I think for me, that's one of the most powerful elements of unschooling. Because whether you're in school or not, right? Like unschooling and schoolishness, you are affected by both of them. Whether somebody calls themselves an unschooler or not, especially the time that we're in now, we're recording this right in the middle of the end, the beginning, I don't know, some part of this pandemic, right?
Right, right.
And so many of us are deschooling. That's another term that my friend Lane Santa Cruz says a lot of her people use those terms synonymously. And I've really adopted that because they really go together for me. Like deschooling is what happens when you make the decision to have a different relationship with your child. It's just from the space of how they learn. You open this portal, because that's what unschooling really is. If there was like one word, it's a portal. It's not
Mm,
about class or no class. It's not about school or not school. It's a portal. And what it is a portal for the type of breaking open, the type of unraveling, as I call it in my book, that then allows you to be a better witness, a better listener of your own selves, of the things that were your own school wounds, your own intuition, your own sense of what boundaries might mean for you, even if you're not sure. And so it allows for a type of slowing down that then gives you the space to recognize elements of how you are showing up and what you need, how you are showing up and what you need, just those two things.
mm,
Because how you are showing up is very much influenced by what you need. And when you are not getting what you need, just like our body does, just like nature does, it's going to try to pull it from other places. And as people who are in this colonized, hierarchical, Western, male, white body supremacist type of way that affects all of us, the decolonization work, that big word, is really just about allowing yourself to unravel so that you can rehumanize. You can rehumanize yourself, you can rehumanize your relationships. And that's really what decolonizing is, because to colonize is to segment, it's to power over, it's to remove consent, it is to remove the sense of autonomy and collective liberation or even collective rights. It's the removal of all of those things. So to rehumanize is the opposite of that, to be in relationship, first of all, with all elements of self, to recognize and honor the part of you as a woman or who wants to feel like a martyr, and to understand with compassion why you feel like that instead of guilt or shame, or to hold it with guilt or shame, because we are all dynamic enough actually to hold all those pieces. So for me, the decolonization is both individual, right? And it's communal, because you start to put down the pieces that you needed to hold. You start to back up a little bit from the people over whom you have power, which for many adults is children. And if you are not a white bodied adult, you have even less power. So maybe children are the only people over whom you have power.
mm,
So you got to get that right,
yeah.
right? So there are all these things that come up that you now get to be with when you recognize that you are decolonizing slash deschooling, and then you can now rehumanize your relationships away from that colonial, that settler colonial perspective that we're all steeped in, and over into one that is informed by the consent of the children around you, your subtle body, and all these other things that are really big part of our relationship practices that are now severed, segmented, othered
Right.
because of colonization. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's, that the what you speak about in terms of relationship is really, that relationship with self, that relationship with others. I think it's such a powerful practice when we begin that work of decolonizing those relationships. And particularly, I think for moms, the guilt and the shame that is so epidemic for us because we have all these different expectations that have been placed upon us and that we've placed upon ourselves, that it becomes totally overwhelming to just to exist as a mom, and particularly now with the pandemic. How has the pandemic affected your mothering and your work?
Um, as far as my work, I'm certainly busier than I've ever been. That's why I was even like, oh my gosh, I only have this much time. I'm super, super busy. Not necessarily doing new things, but it seems like there's a lot more space for the things that many of us as unschoolers we've been grappling with and feeling through. Many more people in the world are grappling with that and feeling through that, which feels good, if I
Yeah.
dare say, because I I know the power of this type of unraveling. I know the power of going from feeling like you know, right? I call that studenthood. I have the answers, me, to move from that to I don't know. Like, and I don't mean I don't know a little bit. I mean I don't know. So the pandemic is like the big I don't know. What is normal? When are we going to get back to it? What's going to happen to this, that, da da da? That's happening, and I think that's obviously there are elements of that that are really horrible, and then there are also opportunities in that for us to be with not knowing, because
Yeah.
that's also how we rehumanize. So what has changed, one of the things that has changed for me in the pandemic is to be able to have conversations less from the space of people either looking at me or themselves or information as the guru and the solution, and more so from a space of witnessing and disruption, and really curiosity
Yeah.
and seeking and a little bit of intuitive knowing, not the bookish knowing. So lots of that has happened, in the world of unschooling and self-directed education and belonging,
Yeah.
which are really the spaces that I play in the most. And as far as in my home and in my mothering, it's slowed down there too, which is really good. We were nomadic prior to COVID. So we were living in different cities across different countries for like, 3 to 6 months at a time. And
Mm.
we've now been here on Muskogee Creek land, so-called Atlanta, Georgia, for a hot minute.
Yeah.
So that's been interesting too, to just be like physically rooted in a space. It feels good for the first time, actually. So that's really different.
Yeah. And how were you traveling for years?
Yeah, since
Yeah.
2012.
Wow. Wow. And I imagine right now there's so many people that are, opening up to the idea of unschooling or even just hearing about it for the first time. So I can understand why you've gotten so busy. I know for me, I made a big move in September from Miami to Tennessee,
Mm.
which is, a huge culture shock in so many ways. And before I moved, I was going through your course, and I just felt like it was this great opportunity for a fresh start and moving into that observation zone. Uh,
Yes, that is
yeah.
a big culture shock too. I went to high school close to Miami, well, in Miramar. I don't know if you know
Okay. Yeah.
that yeah,
Yeah.
so I went to Miramar. And so yeah, and then I have family in Tennessee. And
Oh, wow.
yeah, so I've been to Tennessee many times, and I grew up in South Florida when we moved from Jamaica. So yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah, it really is a big shift, and to do it in the middle of a pandemic as well. But it's been, I spent really the whole fall just I think your course really allowed me to just be comfortable with, I'm just going to sit back and observe my kids for a while and see,
Good.
what they want to do. And yeah, I would love to hear you speak a little bit about that allowing and the observation
Yeah.
mode.
Absolutely, and I'm so glad that you were able to do that. And thank you for mentioning that one of those invitations came from the course, because that's exactly what I wanted to do with that. That is my COVID response course in a sense, because
Mm.
I was so frustrated with the feedback I was getting from a lot of young people and a lot of adults about the type of force and fear and the crisis schooling type thing. And so that, particularly that thing around observation, is really an invitation to settle into what is already known. Again, schoolishness really perpetuates this not enoughness. You can't possibly know enough. So the pursuit look like you know a little bit more, at least than the other person, because that's how you get a better job, and that's how you get respect, and that's how you feel validated, and that's how your mom's like, "Good job, Karina," and that's how all
Right.
these things that happen. Um, so to shift out of that to observe and to witness is such an opportunity to actually learn. And it's one of the simplest invitations I can offer, because it comes with so much. When you observe, I couldn't tell you, nor do I try to tell people what they could possibly observe. And in my book, there's so many other people who talk about what happened when they observed their children as well. I
Mm.
encourage it, because it's also for people who are like, well, what would a curriculum look like at home? That's how you can find that out if you're still attached to that, which is okay, because it's a process. If you still feel attached to that, make observation a part of your curriculum. Take a notebook
Mm.
out about it. I observe my kids without saying anything, directing them, telling anybody to do or not do something for this 3 hour block. What happened? How did it feel in my body? What happened when I didn't allow myself to speak? What else came up? What did it remind me of that I now have a chance to actually feel through, because I didn't immediately act upon it or weaponize it like we tend to do with our emotions upon children. So
Yeah.
these are the invitations that you allow yourself when you observe. You will learn so much that your children might not be able to articulate with words, or that you might not be able to articulate with words, that might be even more potent through observation energy, because you can then apply it to how you then interact.
Yes. Wow. So powerful. I would love to talk to you for hours on end, but I know you are limited with your time. So I wanted to give you the opportunity before we close to share how people can find you, work with you, and yeah,
Thanks.
learn more.
Yes, and thanks for being so gracious with my limited time, because I want to be in a lot of spaces, but again, that martyrdom thing too. It's like I'm so over that. I'm not even
Yeah.
trying to be about that life. Raisingfreepeople.com is the site. Everything is there. I also have a podcast called Fear of the Free Child that really focuses on what it means to reclaim our relationships, particularly as Black or Native, Indigenous, and people of color in parenting, because the layers impact us at a whole nother level. I also, the course From Schoolish to Self-Directed, I'm happy actually to gift a few seats of those, maybe 3 seats of that course, to
Okay.
folks who are in the Motherfly tribe. That would be
Yes.
great.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, you're so welcome. And that course and all the other ones that I offer are on RFP Unschool, Raising Free People Unschool.com.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you being here with us, and just be well. Keep shining all of your beautiful light in the world. I'm just so thankful that I found you when I did. It was at the beginning of the pandemic, and your voice and your message just created a lot of safety for me. Yeah.
That's so good to know, because that is the point. That's what I'm supposed to be doing. Because I know what it feels like to have the opposite of that. When we started unschooling, we felt so isolated and fearful. And so to hear that is really encouraging.
Mm, great. Well, again, thank you so much, and have a beautiful rest of your day.
You too.
Bye.
Be well.